Hey, my name's Tim Don. I'm a professional triathlete, Ironman triathlete now, former ITU triathlete. Yeah, living the dream, racing all over the world, and this is the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by On Running and Pogo Physio. I'm Brad Beer, physiotherapist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. As per the intro, the aim of this show is to educate and inspire you towards the pursuit of your own physical best performance. We do this through interviews featuring some of the world's top physical performers and also some of the world's preeminent experts in their chosen fields. Each week, we'll aim to bring you the highs, the lows, and the learnings of the featured guests. And today's featured performer, Tim Don, triathlon great, is not going to disappoint. Today's conversation with Tim Don absolutely has all three ingredients. Plenty of highs, very low lows, and a whole wealth of learnings. By way of bio, today's featured performer, Tim Don, is a triathlon great. Tim is a three-time British Olympic triathlete, having competed in the very first triathlon appearance at the Olympic Games in Sydney 2000, where Tim finished 10th. Tim then went on to compete in 2004 at the Athens Olympic Games, and then later again in 2008 at the Beijing Olympic Games. Tim has been a multiple world champion in triathlon and duathlon, winning the Junior World Triathlon title in 1998, and then again becoming the Senior or Open World Triathlon Champion in 2006. Tim has had countless Triathlon World Cup and Ironman Triathlon podium appearances. And then in 2017, two remarkable things happened in Tim's life. On the 28th of May 2017, Tim Don became the Ironman Triathlon world record holder when he took 4 minutes off the pre-existing mark that stood by former Physical Performance Show guest, professional triathlete Lionel Sanders. Tim's time, the new Ironman World Triathlon record, which he broke at the South American Championships in Florianópolis, Brazil, was just remarkable. Tim's total time, 7 hours, 40 minutes and 23 seconds with a 2:44 marathon off the bike. And then the second remarkable, but not for the same reasons, incident that occurred in 2017 happened just 2 days prior to the Ironman World Triathlon Championships in Hawaii. Tim was out riding his bike and a reckless driver driving a truck took Tim out on his bike. And this story has been well documented by a wonderful documentary put together by the On Running team titled Man with a Halo. You see, in this crash, Tim sustained a C2 or neck hangman's fracture, a fracture of his neck. This fracture would see Tim admitted to hospital just 2 days prior to what Tim refers to in this interview as 10 years of preparatory work for a shot at becoming the 2017 Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Champion. And in this episode, Tim shares intimately around the crushing disappointment of being told that he had a C2 fracture to his neck and that he'd missed the 2017 Hawaii Ironman World Championships, the fear that set in, and the arduous of the rehabilitation that is still ongoing and that has followed. Tim reflects on some great memories throughout his triathlon career, including some stints in training with the great Mo Farah and former podcast guest Spencer Smith. Tim touches on the highs of his world titles. And of course, we punch through the performance round and Tim lays down a physical challenge for the week. Now, stay tuned for the end of the show where one of Tim's main sponsors, On Running has a fantastic giveaway for 2 lucky listeners to win a pair of On Running shoes. At the time of this episode release, Tim Don is just 10 days away from his 2018 Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Championships outing. And who would have thought that just 365 days prior, Tim was laying in a hospital bed being told that he had a broken neck. So this is a really remarkable comeback from Tim, and he touches on his 2018 Kona preparation, his surprise at qualifying, and how he's going to approach the race. So let's jump in with Tim Don sharing around his highs, lows, and plenty of learnings. Tim Don, this is a real thrill. I know behind the scenes we've been working on getting this set up via Franco, your manager, for a little while, and to be able to time this in the lead up to the 2018 Hawaii Ironman World Ironman Championships, Triathlon Championships, is a real buzz. So, Tim, thanks for jumping on the call, evening your time in Boulder, Colorado.
That's right, yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a cracking day here, still full on summer, so enjoying the weather and, trying to get as many miles in as I can before Kona.
Well, Tim, we'll go to Kona in a moment, but let's start with something there a bit fun. And what's one thing that you're learning at the moment? Like, this has been one massive challenging but, fulfilling, I suspect, 12 to 18 months for you. But what's one thing that you're learning at the moment, Tim?
I think one thing, I'm trying to learn how to be a better barista at the moment when I'm not training. And I think, with my training, just I'm learning that perseverance is definitely worth it, as hard as it can be at the time.
So the perseverance, I mean, that's a word that I think anyone that's familiar, as I believe most of the world of endurance sports are now, familiar with the Tim Don story, but it's perseverance has to be a big part of it, and has been. Was there ever a time in the last 12 months where you didn't think that you would persevere?
Absolutely. Every day, if I'm honest. It's not a case of saying, right, I'm going to do it, get back to Kona, get back to the top. And, it's life throws all sorts of challenges, and you have all sorts of, I don't know if demon's too strong a word, but no, there are definitely days and times within most days where I thought, gosh, am I going to be able to do it? Is this worthwhile? The sacrifices, as a professional athlete, you put your family through, but then on top of that with my accident, but I'm lucky that I've got an amazing wife and support team around me that, really believed in me and, helped me, persevere the really tough times. And, we're still fighting to try and get back to full fitness. So, yes, it's been hard. And
so, Tim, I think that's so interesting. Obviously your triathlon career is illustrious. It's been spanning 2 decades. Before we threw to record today, I mentioned that when I was a junior, I was in the same lane on a couple of occasions at the Pizzey Park swimming pool here on the Gold Coast. And so it's been 2 decades long. But as you've drawn towards the latter stages of that career, if I picked up correctly there was a sense of like pressure, and you're aware of the sacrifice that your young family, your wife and 2 beautiful kids, make obviously along the way. And then I guess the accident, just compounded that. Is that fair? Absolutely. I mean, when you're young and dumb, you can fly around the world, you get invited to these races and you can have a great time. You can train with different coaches, different triathlon squads, and life is fun and training's just awesome. And, you take the rough with the smooth, with niggles, injuries, with performances that don't go your way. But as you get older, I definitely don't take those highs for granted. That there is more, I don't know if pressure's the right word, but more, there's more to it than just the training. It's the holistic approach with having a young family and trying to earn your living as a professional triathlete. And, I always think, as a professional, I try and prepare for every eventuality in training and racing, leave no stone unturned. But, what happened before Kona definitely was a curveball that we didn't see, and the implications of a crash, from a possible broken collarbone to an eventual, broken neck. It was really
really hard to handle at the time.
Yeah, and that's despite obviously you're a happy-go-lucky type of bloke. Anyone that knows you, your heart, but then obviously aside from the light-hearted approach on some of your social posts, there was some really dark try and testing moments in the background. And Tim, I'd love to unpack that. Can we put listeners in a little bit of context before we unpack the Kona story? And I mean, your triathlon career, you started in 92, you turned pro in 97, 3 Olympic Games representations later, 4 world titles, and it's still going, an Ironman world record. Tim, how did triathlon start for you, and what was the initial motivation?
When I was younger, when I was 7 or 8, I was swimming before school, after school. I love swimming. You kind of get into that kind of swim squad mentality. And, by the time I hit 12, I changed schools to the senior school and I started to run, and the PE teacher said I was a good runner. So I joined a running club, and I really, I was enjoying my running and swimming, and I was never the best. I was fortunate and unfortunate. I guess there were 2 lads that went to my school, one a year younger, one a year older, who both went on to run, Commonwealth Games, under 23 European medalists. And then when I was 14, a guy called Mo Farah joined our run squad. So
that guy.
That guy. So he certainly put me in my place. And he was obviously 5 or 6 years younger than me. It was pretty phenomenal. But at my swim squad, I was in the B squad and I never made the A squad. But in the A squad, there was this guy with big, long hair who used to run halfway down the pool and dive in every session. And they would get in as we got out. And the coach was called Malcolm. And he'd always go, "Spencer!" And that guy was Spencer Smith. One day after swimming, I saw him with his convertible Mercedes getting this pink Specialized bike with tri-spoke wheels. And I was like, oh, my God, what does that guy do? How's this? He must have still been a teenager. Maybe he was 20. I'm not sure. And, he did a sport called triathlon. And, at the pool, there was a local triathlon club called Thames Turbo, because we're on the River Thames in London. And, I joined the local club, and I guess, that was did my first triathlon, a local swimming pool 20k bike, 5k run. Did absolutely appalling, but really, really enjoyed it. And that's how I got into triathlon back in the day.
Well, that has to be one of the best origin stories, Tim. You were discouraged by Mo Farah, but encouraged and inspired by Spencer Smith, who's formerly featured on the show. So that's fascinating. I mean, interestingly, your running career with Mo, I know you ran in 2010 in the Great Manchester 10K, and you went through in a scorching 28.56, which I believe was 52 seconds behind Gabriel Alessi. And you said on that, not Mo, sorry, that was Gabriel Alessi, that it wasn't bad for a triathlete. I'd say that's quite outstanding, Tim, sub 29.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always, I guess, prided myself in my running pedigree. When I was younger, I ran a 3:46 1500 and a couple of solid 5Ks. But I knew I could never make it as a professional runner. I just, the times they were running then, and the times they're running now, it's just, it just wasn't possible. And I really loved triathlon. I loved the challenge. It was a new sport. It wasn't even an Olympic sport then. That had a massive, when you do well at something, you tend to enjoy it a little bit more. And, by the time I'd done, one season of triathlon, I was kind of, being chosen to represent Great Britain at the European Youth Championships, and traveling to Finland and Hungary for races. And that really kind of I'd do the running training, but I just couldn't compete with the guys at the top when I was growing up.
And Tim, I mean, you meteorically rose, as you say. You were selected for Great Britain. This was a real, quite an amazing time in the world of triathlon, the 90s, leading up to the debut in the Sydney Olympic Games. And, it was such an exciting time, and you really rode the wave of that. I mean, right up to your Olympic debut, where in Sydney you finished in 10th place representing Great Britain. What happened between those years of being that young boy inspired by Spencer Smith and his pink Specialized bike through to putting on the national, it wasn't even a triathlon a triathlon suit back then. It was a more probably the singlet and the DTs.
Speedos.
Yes,
that's it. It was DTs, CJs.
Yeah, the DTs. So what was the moment of catalyst where you thought, wow, I'm world class, or were there a few along the way?
I think it was probably in 1998 I had my breakthrough year. In 97 I was only 19, and I flew to Australia on my own because the World Championships were in Perth, but I wanted to do some training in Australia before, so I flew to Brisbane on my own. Ended up doing a homestay and racing the Noosa Triathlon in 97, 2 weeks before the Perth World Champs, and I think I may have been top 20, but maybe not, in a non-drafting race, because it was non-drafting back then, against the likes of Craig Walton, Paul Amy, Miles Stewart, all those lads. Then I went across to Perth, and I didn't do very well at all at the World Champs. I got a DNF, and I went home licking my wounds. But I thought I'll give it one more go because I just loved it. It was just something about it. And then I really put my head down the winter of 97, 98, and kind of hit the ground running. Won my first junior race, got second at the European Champs, and we had the World Champs then were in Lausanne, and they did the big announcement that it was going to be an Olympic Games. And I remember, I think it was about 3 weeks before, there was a crazy race in Germany called the Schliersee Triathlon, and it was a non-drafting race, but it had, oh my gosh, I think they finished with about a 6-kilometre climb up a hill, and then you had this crazy hilly off-road run. And I knew all the European seniors who I was racing, but then this Aussie contingent turned up of Bryce Quirk, Levi Maxwell. I don't think Courtney raced, and there was another guy. I think it was Cameron someone, another junior.
Cameron Watt.
And we're at the press. Was it Cameron Watt? It could have been Cameron Watt. It was the guys who were all going to the Junior Worlds. And I remember this race, and I was riding real well. I'd been training with Tim Bentley, another Aussie, and Andrew Noble, living in Arduous with them. So I was climbing well, and I remember, oh my God, seeing all these Aussies, and they're obviously famous for being awesome swimmers. I had a great race there and got on the podium, and and I thought, wow, I can compete internationally, and that really gave me confidence going to the World Champs in Lausanne. And then I had a great race there. I think it was about 6K into the run, and it was just myself and Bryce left. There was Levi, Stuart Hayes, another English guy, and Courtney. And the two of us got away, and with about 3 or 4K to go, I was able to drop Bryce and kind of become the world junior champion. And that definitely, for me, that was a big difference, winning a world title, and that definitely set me up, on my path to where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, a world junior champion, that's going to boost the confidence bank, that's for sure. Where do you think your sporting genes come from, Tim?
My parents. I mean, my mum, she was never she's just ever so sporty. Even now, she's riding and running and at the gym and playing golf and whatnot. My dad, he was a Premier League referee, so not the job I would choose, to be honest. But you have to be pretty fit for that. And he went to the World Cup and the Olympic Games, officiating Premier League, FA Cup final, European Cup final. My sister, 5 years older, she rode for Oxford University. She's won a few medals at age group ITU. Triathlon, duathlon, I think winter triathlon and cross-country skiing and stuff. So we were just, we weren't computer. Growing up, we never really had computers. We were always outside, running, mountain biking, going on walking holidays in the Yorkshire Dales or the Lake District. I think it was just the way I was brought up, just active life, active, healthy lifestyle from a very young age. It was just like normal for us.
And Tim, you then went on from a junior world title to 2006, beating Hamish Carter, New Zealand's great triathlete, to take the ITU World Championship that year. So you've successfully transitioned from junior world champion to adult world champion. It took, 8 years in the process. Those 8 years, lots of highs and lows, I assume.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the low was after I won that world title, I got invited to Australia by the Bray brothers to do the St George Formula One, and I think my best result was 15th out of the 20 athletes that raced all the St George races. So that was definitely a quick, sharp learning curve for me. but no, definitely on the way. I mean, there were the highs of my first Olympic Games in Sydney, the lows of having a terrible race in Athens. couple of times when I got punches, in races when, I was in good shape. But, in those days, it was still about the journey. I was working with various coaches. By the time 2005 came, I was working with Brett Sutton, 205, 206, and a few years after that with Ben Bright as well. So yeah, we're always striving for that perfect race to have it on that day when it was just one day World Championships. And yeah, I definitely 205 was a breakthrough year for me. I run 3 World Cups, which are now WTSs, but I swallowed my tongue in the grand final, or the World Champs in Gamagori, Japan. So that didn't go that well. So the year after, I decided to focus on just one race, the World Champs. There's so many. When I think about the years, I think of this race and that race. Com Games in Melbourne, they were awesome. Getting fourth there to Stixie and Bevan and Robbo as well. It was just a great bunch of guys who were just training hard, traveling around the world, trying to smash each other on race day, Good honest racing.
Absolutely. And Tim, that's great because it really does give a context to your background, which I think the world identifies you as an Ironman triathlete these days. But there's such a rich legacy of your involvement with the sport. So thanks for just sharing a few brushstrokes, broad brushstrokes of that journey. Tim, fast forwarding, if you had to pick out the high of your athletic career to date, and by gosh, there's been so much. I mean, obviously that World Ironman record that you set. What was it? 7 hours, 40 minutes, 23 seconds. In May 2017, the Ironman South American Champs. I mean, surely that has to be one. But what would be your highest moment athletically, Tim, and why?
I definitely think, 2006 World Champs in Lausanne. It's renowned. I mean, it's going to be the grand final next year on a very similar course. It was a real tough course. I didn't make there was a break in the bike, which I didn't go with. And then I jumped across on my own from the main pack to the, I think, 8 guys who were off the front, and then going toe-to-toe with Hamish, who 2 years earlier, he was the current Olympic champion. My family were there, my then girlfriend, now wife. My sister was living in Lausanne. My parents were there. I got 4th at the Commonwealth Games earlier that year. I'd won 1 World Cup, but I'd got a lot of 2nds and 3rds and 4ths and 5ths. That really meant a lot to me, to be world champion. As I was leading up to Beijing in 2008. So definitely, Lausanne. 2006 I would say was definitely for me, if the best performance I've had as a professional athlete.
Can you recall the first thing that you said to your parents, or they said to you, Tim, after you became the world, senior open champion in 2006?
I think there was lots of tears, lots of hugs, and just like yes, yes. And I was living with Andrew Johns at the time in Les Sines, because we were training with Brett, which is only maybe 40-50k away. So we had lots of support there. But I think it was just seeing my family and just like bloody hell. I think for me it was relief, but for them it was just sheer joy.
And you used the word earlier, sacrifice, with your family now, your beautiful young family there, and obviously that's that was shared back then in 2006 by all your loved ones and your friends, etc., who had done the journey with you from 12-year-old child in the pool being inspired by Spencer Smith through to the world champ.
Yeah, and that's the kind of sport it is. It is. You need the support and help when you're younger. When you're juniors, you need taxi drivers. You need people who are willing to buy your bikes and wetsuits and things like that. I'm very fortunate that I've had an amazing support structure. My local club growing up, Thames Turbo. When I'm back in London, I still swim at that pool, and wow. I think I've been fortunate with the people that have supported me, and I've surrounded myself with over my whole career, and I'm still in contact with a lot of them now even.
You're listening to Tim Don, triathlon great, current Ironman triathlon world record holder, sharing around his highs, lows, and learn-ins. Support for today's show comes from On Running. With its revolutionary idea, On Running a Swiss running shoe company, has taken on the global running scene with speed. It's not just a love of running that former top athletes Olivier Bernhard and his friend David Alleman and Casper Copetti shared. They also shared a dedication to the development of a perfect product. And this is what has turned a revolutionary idea into a new running shoe that began by amazing the sporting scene and has since helped numerous top athletes to new personal bests at world championship events. On Running believe that you were born to run, not just on hard surfaces, and that's why they reinvented the running shoe to put you one step ahead of evolution. Clever elements, termed by On as clouds, cushion your landing and then disappear completely for an effortless transition and an explosive takeoff. Don't wait for the evolution. Try On running shoes on and experience a new running sensation. For more information about the On running shoe range, jump over to on-running.com. Today's episode is also lovingly brought to you by Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to complete rehabilitation, get back to their physical best, and cross their physio finish line. In addition to traditional session-to-session physiotherapy appointments, Pogo Physio offers some unique industry-first and award-winning models of care, including our 2, 6 and 12-week finish line programs and our fixed-fee monthly wellness booster packages, including active rehabilitation such as clinical Pilates, exercise physiology, hands-on therapies including physiotherapy and remedial massage, and use of state-of-the-art equipment such as the Alta G anti-gravity treadmill, all designed to help you save money and recover faster. To find out more, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. For now, let's jump back with triathlon great Tim Don sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings. Tim, I mentioned in the intro what happened in Kona 2 or 3 days before you were due to take part in 2017. And I know you've told this story numerous times. It's well captured in the fantastic movie, your movie Man with a Halo. But what I was curious about is you were in red hot form leading into that race. You'd picked up a bronze medal in the 70.3 world champs behind Gomez and Ben Canute, who we have featured previously on the show here. And you just set the world record in qualifying for Kona. What were your legitimate expectations? You were going there, you're in the latter stage of your career. What were you expecting? Good answer.
A hard, hot, windy race against the best guys in the world. No, you got to believe you can fight. And, I knew, coming from ITU, I knew I was going to swim with the lead group. I was looking to come off in touch with the leaders. I don't think I would have biked with, Cam, Sebi and Lionel. But, if I'd have come off the bike within 3 to 5 minutes of those guys and, run how I had been in training, I'd have been in with a shout, I believe, for a podium. And, but we'll never know. You can never say you would have come this, you would have come that. But I definitely think I would have been fighting it out for a top spot that year. I was in great form. Obviously, I was in better shape than I was leading up to Brazil. I'd done well in Chattanooga. I know this sounds maybe quite weird, but I was happy. I was in a good mental space. I was, rooming with one of my best mates, Sam, who had qualified as an age grouper. Things were just flowing really nicely. And, in high performance, that your kind of like mental state really reflects in your physical performance on race day. So I'd like to think I'd have been one of the boys fighting it out, right to the end.
And I appreciate the character that you are, Tim. It's honouring to not say, I would have taken this position because it disrespects the guys that did it. But look, I think anyone that follows the sport can identify that you would have been in the mix, the pointy, and that's for sure. Tim, obviously the accident happens. You're off to the hospital. You've told this story before. It's so well captured in the film. As a physiotherapist myself, the moment that I just get stuck on is you being told after your MRI scan that you've got a C2 or a hangman's fracture of your neck. I mean, what kicked in? Was it panic? Was Kelly there, your wife there? Was Franco, your manager, there? Who was around you? And what were those initial moments like when you were actually told that you had a C2 fracture and, this is serious?
No, unfortunately, Kelly, she was back in Boulder because it was my daughter's birthday the next day, and she's at school. I was with Franco, my manager, my coach Julie, and my very good friend Pat, who flew back with me. He went out to Kona to watch the race, but he flew back with me instead. I think I was in a state of shock because I think everyone around me realised that this was bloody serious. Well, until I heard that, I thought, well, I haven't broke because I x-rayed my collarbone because my shoulder was very swollen. And I was like, well, I think I've only got whiplash and my shoulder's not, I haven't broken my collarbone. So there's a chance I could race. And when I think back, I'm like, these guys are looking at me going, are you mad? So I think for me, it was total, I guess, disbelief. I didn't appreciate how bad it was. And then the nurse left, and then I started crying, and then I really started crying, and everyone's going nuts because as you start crying, my whole body was shaking. And they're like, you got to calm down, because they didn't want me to dislodge anything else in my neck. And that's when they gave me the morphine, because up until then I didn't want to take it just in case I could race. And I think there's so many emotions. I mean, I was saying sorry a lot because I felt like I'd let everyone down, or my sponsors or my coaches, everyone that had been on the journey. And, it's kind of, it was just tough. I mean, I can't put it into words, and I hope no one else, if I'd have messed my race up through bad nutrition, through cramping, through a penalty, through a puncture, at least I gave it a go. But to not be able to get on the start line, it's like studying for an exam and not failing, but you get to the door and they say, sorry, you can't sit this exam. And you're like, well, hold on, I've just studied 10 years for this. This was Ironman's tough as it is. You don't get to line up, a good season and peak at the right time and be in that state. So it was a tough pill to swallow. It really was.
So the tears were probably a mix of the emotions were the gut-wrenching disappointment, as you say, of not even getting to the start line. And it's not just, 10 weeks of prep. This is year upon year that you've been building for hopefully this, great moment in your career. And then also, would you use, you said it's hard to put into words, but, was it terrifying? Was it terrifying or more disappointing, or both? You can't even split it.
I think definitely more. I think in that moment, I didn't appreciate the severity of my injury.
Yeah.
And once I was on the morphine, you can't remember much, to be honest. I would say it was just more like disbelief, more utter, like, I don't, this is the first time in my whole career I have ever been hit by a car. I've broken bones, had skin off, stitches in my face, but that's through mechanical failures or, tires, wet weather, etc. It's the first time in my whole career I've ever had an altercation and been taken out by a car. And it's just like, are you for real? I was in the cycle lane. It really was, heartbreaking for me.
What was the first conversation like with your children? Obviously, your daughter was at home with Kelly, your wife, having a birthday around that time. What was the first conversation like with your kids, Tim?
I didn't speak to them because I flew home on Thursday evening, Thursday the 12th, and so my wife was lucky. She's really good friends with Sarah Lee, Chris Lee's wife, the Aussie triathlete. So they live in Colorado as well. So Franco was talking to Sarah more than Kelly, just to kind of like explain the situation and let Sarah tell her, if you know what I mean. But we didn't tell my children until I got there. But Hugo was 3; it went totally over his head. And Matilda, she's pretty, I don't know if level-headed. She's pretty mature for her age, and we were very matter of fact. And she's been very ill in the past, and spent a lot of time in hospital, so she really understands doctors and the fact that they're there to make you better, and we do what they say, and we don't do anything except what they say. So that's kind of like the path we took. And when they saw the halo for the first time, they were I think Hugo, he just wanted to give me a hug, and Kelly's like, no, don't touch him. And Matilda was a bit more like, oh dear, what is that? How is that attached to you? Oh gosh, where does it go? More the inquisitive 7-year-old really at the time. So yeah, no, I was very lucky that they were pretty good.
And you mentioned there, Tim, and I don't want to try and describe what the documentary so beautifully captures. So if you're yet to see Man with a Halo, we'll pop it in the show notes. You can search for it on YouTube, online. You'll find it in a heartbeat. But Tim, you said that your family's always done what the doctors say. There was a few choices put before you in terms of how to manage the fracture. Can you take us through what those were and why you decided to go with the Halo, which is, it's not what you see every day of the week?
No, it's not. Certainly not. No, so, I mean, I was lucky that Boulder's a hotbed of endurance sport, and, lots of people, amateurs and professionals, train here. And first of all, the doctor I saw, he'd done Kona as an amateur. He actually did Alaska Man this season, the Ironman in Alaska. So he knew the kind of athlete I was, which was a great help. And he said, look, you've got 3 options. You can either have a fusion where we fuse C1 and C2 together with 2 titanium bolts. You can wear a soft collar, or you can have a halo. And he said, you could go for the fusion. That's the most common, that's the most advanced medical technique to deal with this injury. But you're going to lose lots of range permanently in your neck, and maybe to leave an active life like you want to do within 5 to 10 years, there's a good chance you're going to need another fusion, because it's obviously going to put more stress on C3, C4, C5. If you have the soft collar, they really are not going to, they're not going to sit your neck perfectly still, which is what we want, a plaster cast for your neck. I would give you 3 choices, but I would highly recommend the Halo. It's where we put this halo around your neck, we attach it via 4 bolts to your skull, then there's an A-frame that comes down to your shoulders, and then a brace that goes right down to your belly button, and that will make your neck totally irremovable. You will not be able to move it. Once it's on. And I was like, yep, if that's what you say. I was very like, yep, you're the doctor, that's what you tell me, yep. And he said, okay, the guys come in, he'll be about an hour with a couple of different sizes. Why don't you go and grab a coffee? And I said, I haven't seen my family. So I went to see Kelly, and the kids are out. So I went to see them, had a coffee, came back, and that's when they started to screw me.
Yeah, and with some serious Newton meters too, right? Some serious
oh my God.
Tension. I mean, it looks excruciating. Were you sedate? Were you local anaesthetics? I assume you would have had to have had them.
Yeah, I mean, I had local anaesthetic. They shaved the back of my head, and I had 2 screws in the back, 2 screws in the front. And the unfortunate thing with local anaesthetic when you inject it is it needs kind of flesh to absorb, and there's not much flesh around your skull. So they did as best the job as they could, but I'll be honest, I was on a codeine-based painkiller as well, like orally, but it wasn't very comfortable. I could feel it grip my skin when they're tightening it and twist my skin into my skull. And as you say, they had a torque wrench, and they had to tighten them evenly, so there was equal pressure front and back, left and right. And first of all, they tightened it to 2 Newton meters, then 4, then 6, and eventually 8. And every time they do it, it's like when it gets to the end torque, it clicks, and it's just vibrating through my whole skeletal system. So it really, I wouldn't recommend it.
Tim, thanks for taking us there. I know it's not the first time you've spoken about it, obviously. Must see the documentary to see the removal of it. It's quite a moving moment. I don't even have words for it, Tim. And what if you had to choose a word for that, though? What would be the one word you would describe your emotions when they were taking that off? The moment you had to weight bear with your head, which is 5 kilos. What's the word you'd use at that point?
Absolute relief. Just pure relief. Just relief.
Relief that it was off.
That it's off. It was totally off. The doctor, Dr. V, described it as a bowling ball being supported by a piece of spaghetti, because obviously I'd lost so much muscle mass, and obviously it's like sitting in economy class for 3 months. I could not move a muscle, but on top of that, I had so much muscle mass. It really was a peculiar feeling. But I did have, I think it was an Aspen collar at first, which was quite aggressive. So yeah, it wasn't a case of, the halo's off, let's go for a run, let's go for a swim. I think that's when it dawned on me, the hard work that was ahead of me to try and get back to a very, very light training week, let alone racing an Ironman or running a marathon.
And at that point, you harboured the ambition to get back and go out of your career on your own terms rather than a reckless truck driver's terms. But in your heart of hearts at that point, surely there was doubts that you'd be able to get back.
Oh, doubt always creeps in. And, whether you're Jan Frodeno, Daniela Riff, or, I don't know, Michael Phelps, they're lying if they say they don't doubt themselves. Often it's that self-doubt that makes you train harder, believe more, that really makes you do everything possible in your power to try and be the best athlete you can be. But for me, it's such a way of life as well. Triathlon, endurance sport, that had been taken away from me. It was the least amount of exercise I'd probably done since I was a 6 or 7 year old kid. And I really, I really wanted to, as you said, I wanted to get back to some normality for me, which is flogging myself every day.
Yeah, no, and I say in my work, Tim, as a physiotherapist, we people think we treat their pain, their symptoms, and yes, we do, but it's more the emotions that circulate that, the anxieties, the fears, the frustrations, and I mean, those would have been sky high for you. I mean, the rehab we could talk about extensively, but I just want to ask you, before we jump over to your current status, getting ready for Kona and then do a performance round, Tim, I want to ask you, what was the most surprising part of the rehab journey for you? Just how slow it is. I mean, even now, I still can't breathe to my right when I swim. I can't lay on my tummy and sleep because I can't turn my head to the side comfortably it would wake me up, within a couple of hours. Just that, such a small fracture, just such a small bone can affect your body so much. I've had hip issues, where touch wood, they're good now, but when I really started running, building up to an Ironman I was doing about 6 weeks ago, I had hip issues because my head wasn't sitting straight. So there was an imbalance in my right hip, which was meaning my left, it was just that, the body is just so connected. And, as you say, it's not just, you need to treat not just the neck, but the whole body as a holistic approach. And, I definitely learned that more than ever now. And I mean, you jump back in the gym there after a few weeks of being put into the brace, the halo brace, and I think I've heard you recount that you did a little, 8 minutes or something, or a few minutes on the exercise bike, and you felt like the king of the world.
Oh, it was just an endorphin release. I think I came home and my wife was like, "Thank God for that."
and Tim, what's we're skipping the Boston Marathon, which you courageously put your hand up for, and got through in a sub 2 hour 50 time, and therefore honoured the New York Times headline, which is an interesting story. But what's training look like for you at the moment? You're several weeks out from Kona 2018. And I do want to pick up the qualifying story, but what's your current training look like, Tim, and how's your body going? You mentioned you've still got restriction rotating your neck to the right. Yeah,
I'm preparing as best I can. I know I haven't done the volume over the winter, and obviously I've had to do virtually 2 Ironmen to qualify, very close together, very close to Kona. But no, I've got Julie Dibbons and my triathlon coach, and Matt Bottrell, my bike coach. Got an amazing guys working with me, and I'm in heavy training. Lots of sweet spot work on the bike, and I'm building up my running. I was able to run 32 kilometers yesterday at 2,600 meters above sea level. Bit with Liz Blatchford, actually. Her husband Glenn was sagging us, so that was pretty cool. So I'm back into what I would call full training, but I know my form. I know my numbers I'm putting out now are the best I can do now, and that's all you can do. But I know they're not what they were last year. I know my heart rate for the same pace running isn't as efficient. Swimming's going okay. I can only breathe to my left, but so I need to start on the inside at Kona, and I should be okay. But no, I'm under no illusion. I'm not the same athlete right now as I was last year going into Kona. But I've got to respect that, and I don't want to rush it because I can't afford to have any more, hiccups or injuries this year. So, I'm being cautious more than anything, I think, in my build up to Kona.
You're listening to Tim Don share around his highs, lows, and learnings. Triathlon great and 3 times Olympic triathlon representative for Great Britain. If you missed last week's episode, it was an expert edition featuring Benoit Matthew. Benoit is a UK-based physiotherapist, and he took us on a deep dive into all things hip and groin pain. To tune into the full episode, be sure to jump back and listen to episode 129, along with any of the archive shows that grab your interest. There's featured performers, interest editions, and of course the expert editions to choose from. All available from your favourite podcast player. Now let's jump back to triathlon great, current Ironman triathlon world record holder, Tim Don, sharing on the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his incredible career. Tim, you mentioned there on social and an Instagram post that in qualifying for Kona 2018, which let's not forget 2017, a few days before, you've got a hangman's fracture in your neck, a fractured C2 vertebrae. We're talking about not even a year of time, and here you are lining up for it again. But you mentioned that the road to recovery, you said, it commented, is rarely linear. The last 10 months have been all about perseverance to get the first roll down spot was not in your vision. What did you mean by that, not in your vision?
Well, I mean, as far as I was concerned, after Copenhagen, I hadn't qualified. I flew home back to England on Monday. My wife and kids, they were in Spain because my family live in Spain. And I was supposed to be flown back to Boulder to prepare for Kona. And I said, you know what? I'm coming to join you guys for a little holiday. I couldn't get a flight till Wednesday. I thought, right, let's make the best of the situation. So I spoke to Julie and Matt, and we decided to hit Augusta 70.3, Cozumel 70.3, go to Kona, then fly from Kona to Shanghai, nail that 70.3, then go and do the Latin American champs in Argentina. And we were like, yep, come on, we're going to get back there. Let's do it. And I was like, yep, brilliant. And went to bed with a bottle of wine in me. Woke up on Tuesday morning for swimming before my flight, checked my emails. You've got the first roll down spot. And I was like, oh, I didn't know I was number 1 in the roll down. I thought if I was getting a roll down, it was the week before Kona, someone pulling out with a torn hamstring or a dodgy knee or something. So really, really, I hadn't even, it was actually, when I found out, it was like, I didn't know how to process the emotion of like pure joy that I'd done it, or mentally I'd changed my mindset to race, to make the best of the season. I'll be honest, try and make some money for, because I haven't raced that much this year. It did take me a day or two to really like, God, I've got to do another Ironman. Oh God, I've got to do Kona. Oh God, against Jan and the boys. Bloody hell. I'll be honest. Yeah, that's, I never wanted to take the charity spot. Franco said that he'd spoke to Paula Newby-Fraser and there had been talk about offering me a wild card. But I said clearly, I do not want to, I don't want to do that. If I qualify, I qualify. If I don't, I'll just go and qualify next year.
Yeah, Tim, it's remarkable. And you're going to have the whole endurance world cheering for you, Tim, no matter whether you finish in a time that you're happy with or not. The wins so much more, represents so much, to so many people. Tim, are you ready for a performance round? You can chalk this up as your final session for the day before you go to bed tonight.
Okay.
Training session most disliked?
6 kilometre aerobic swim on my own.
Understandable. Training session most loved?
Build run, 5K, 5K, 5K.
Favourite pre-race meal, Tim?
Salmon, white rice, and that's it.
Bedtime and morning time, what are they?
Morning time-wise, is either when Hugo wakes up or normally 6:30 for a quiet coffee, check the BBC app on my phone, what's happening in Europe before the madness. Bedtime, again, we like to put the kids to bed early, have some quiet time. do some stretching and go to bed.
Who's the athlete Tim Don most admires and why?
Definitely Haile Gebrselassie. When I was growing up, he just was endurance running, and he was larger than the sport. He gave back to the sport, gave back to his country, and I think he's just a fantastic role model.
Is there a mantra that you use, Tim, when you're racing or training? Some regular self-talk that you have?
Definitely in training, I always say, when I'm training with other people, I say to myself, look, Tim, there are no medals in training. It's what racing that counts. And because so many people go very hard in training and they think they're king of the world, but it doesn't mean anything unless the gun's gone and there's a finish line.
Tim, your best recovery tip?
Sleep. Sleep as much as you can.
Tim, a classical question we ask in this performance round. It's nearly a moot point, your worst injury. Go figure. A torn calf. No, definitely a broken neck. Exactly. First time for everything on this show, 120-something episodes in. Tim, one word to describe your racing style.
Smart.
How would you describe being in the zone?
I think happy, focused, and determined.
When was the last time you were in that zone, Tim?
Truly, probably Chattanooga for the whole race, but there were definitely times when I felt like I was in that zone in Hamburg Ironman, especially towards the end of the bike when it was all breaking up and I was riding really well.
And, Chattanooga was the 2017 World 70.3 Champs where you finished, third. Tim, you're out of the performance round. Well done. Let me ask you this. If you could boil everything you've learnt, Tim, which is so much over 20 decorated years of top-level endurance sport, into one key bit of advice that you'd give to listeners of this show to help them perform at their best, Tim, what would it be if it could only be one bit of advice?
Oh, my gosh. I think, just never give up. Believe in your dreams, whether it's to be an Olympic champion, an Ironman world record holder, beat your mate, from your rival club. I just think it's, always follow your path and believe in dreams. As corny as it sounds, that's how I've lived, and I've never worked a day in my life.
Tim, if you could have a fun question, we call it the personality question, 3 people at your dinner table, living or past, who would be at your table and why?
Definitely Nelson Mandela. I just think he's an amazing person, and having lived in South Africa for 5 years, I just think, his wisdom and his courage would be fantastic. I think I'd have my wife because, I wouldn't be the same person without her. I definitely want her there. And, maybe, a third person. Maybe Haile Gebrselassie just to talk about training sessions and, times. I know it's a bit geekish, but I think I'm sure if you ask me in an hour's time, I'm sure 1 or 2 of those would change, but definitely.
Absolutely. It just gives a little insight. Tim, a few questions before you throw to the final question, which is a physical challenge for the week. Finish these sentences. The most important thing in life is
happiness, being happy within yourself and who you are and what you do.
What drives you to work hard?
Definitely now my family and just wanting to go fast.
Where does pressure come from for Tim Don?
Definitely myself. God, I'm the most critical out of everyone. You just ask anyone around me.
Are you more externally driven, Tim, or more internally driven, would you say?
I think definitely more internally driven, definitely.
And Tim, what mistakes are you afraid of making?
Finishing a race saying I should have done this, I should have done that. I often, you have that fear of not backing yourself in crucial moments. And I definitely think through time I've learned how to make better decisions under pressure, physical and mental, when it comes to racing and preparing for a race. Yeah,
wow. Tim, finish this one. When you open your eyes in the morning, you
think of coffee.
Nice. Tim, well done. Every guest of the Physical Performance Show, Tim, issues the listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what is Tim Don's physical challenge of the week going to be?
My physical challenge of the week is going to be try and, whatever your sport is, try and do 10% longer or harder than you did the week before, even when it's hurting, whether that's your step count for the week, whether it's your big swim session, your ride, your run, your CrossFit session. Yeah, just try and give that little bit extra, that little 5 to 10% at the end when you know you're hurting. Pain is temporary, glory's forever.
Yeah, powerful. Tim, pain, we've featured Matt Fitzgerald and also Alex Hutchinson, who have both authored books. I'm sure you're aware of How Bad Do You Want It and Endure, which obviously delves into the role of the brain in endurance performance and performance at large. Both books, I guess, I feel could be summed up as, our ability to reach our potential is determined by our perception of the effort. How has your journey post C2 neck fracture, hangman's fracture, to back to where you are now, how do you think that's changed or altered your perception of effort in training and racing?
Racing is different because I'm not racing at the same level as I was, but definitely training, I'm definitely, I'm able to finish sessions that I wouldn't have been able to of the current fitness level, if that makes sense. So sure, they would have been better last year, but in my current state of fitness, there would have been sessions last year where in that state of fitness, I maybe wouldn't have been able to, I would have given 99%. Well, now I'm definitely able to give 100% because I know this could be my last session. I've definitely, I'm appreciating the training more to the point where, I will do everything I can to get the most out of that session because every session counts. It really does for me as a professional.
And you mean because the clock ticks on and you're aware that, at some point your last race will come?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm no spring chicken. I know, Cam Brown. God, do you follow him on social media? He does more training than the whole top 10 in Kona. And you got Crowy, who's like, he must be drinking the water of everlasting youth. But I'm not getting any younger. I'm 40 now. But also, you just never know what's around the corner with your body, with what could happen. And maybe that's a bit, I don't know, philosophical is the right word, but it can all change. All change in an eye blink, as I found out.
As you found out, yeah. And Tim, you just before we wrap it, you just said something that was so fascinating. It caught my attention. That was, I think you used the words, as surprising as it sounds. You're in a good mental state. You are happy. I ask typically in these conversations, the darkest day in athlete's career. What would be your darkest day, Tim?
Oh, it's funny actually. It's probably not around my C2 halo fracture. It's probably in 2008. It was the Beijing Olympics. I was one of the favourites. One of the big races leading up to it was a big World Cup, which I won very comfortably. And Jan and Bevan had a sprint finish for second, about 25 seconds behind me. And then come the Olympic Games, 3 days before, I got food poisoning. And I actually got lapped on the bike because I was, And for me, that took me a couple of years to get over mentally because you train 4 years of your life. And in that moment, that is the pinnacle of the sport. And, I knew I was in the best physical and mental shape I was then. That definitely, that took me, I think I'm wiser now and older. And through that experience, it helped me cope with what's happened to me to a degree over the last 10 months. But yeah, definitely then, that was definitely the darkest day of my career.
And that helped you cope with the last 10 months because you knew that in time everything would be okay? Yeah.
And just that, it's more, your life's bigger than one result. It's who you are and what you do, not always where you cross the line. But when you're younger, I guess I wasn't a spring chicken then. But in 2008, you live and breathe for the sport to the point where there are three types of people after the Olympic Games event. There are the three that have medaled and they're over the moon. Or the people there are people that are young and it's an experience and they're learning it and they're over the moon because they're going to go on to great things. And then there are people that just want to be at the Olympics. And then there's also the people that fight for the medal, don't get it, and they're like, what have I just done for the last 4 years to get 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th? It really is a bizarre thing, the Olympic Games. That's what makes it so special. I'd really recommend anyone going and watch one and really appreciating it. It's just fantastic.
Tim, with that, it's who you are and what you do. That's profound. Thank you for your time, and we wish you, at the time of this release, it'll only be a few weeks until Kona, so we wish you all the very best for this, what the world perceives and sees as a fairy tale comeback.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, hopefully the story's not over yet. Give me a few more years.
Come on, I'm sure there's a few in there for sure, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust you enjoyed today's story featuring Tim Don. My gosh, there was so much in that conversation. We could have spoken for hours, but I hope you took a whole lot out of it. If you did, then please let myself and Tim know over on social media. You can find Tim over on Instagram at TRI_the_Don, THEDON. Find myself at Brad_beer. If you're yet to see the documentary put together by the good folk at On Running, then be sure to jump over to the show notes or simply Google Man with a Halo. It is a documentary you're not going to want to miss, and it brings some of what Tim described today to life. So you'll find that over at the show notes or Google away. A big thanks to you, the good folk, who have been leaving reviews over on iTunes. This week, I want to give a big shout out to regular show listener Hamish Harrison. Hamish rated the Physical Performance Show 5 stars and commented, "Thanks for an informative and motivational podcast. It's great to hear the driving forces behind some of the world's best athletes. Inspirational stuff, Hamish." Hamish, thanks very much for leaving the review. And to say thanks, drop me an email, b.beer@pogophysio.com.au, or simply drop me a message over on Instagram, and I'll make sure you receive a signed copy of the bestseller You Can Run Pain-Free, the revised and expanded edition. If you'd like to leave a review, then it would be massively appreciated. It's a simple process. Jump over to iTunes from your phone or your desktop, click ratings and review, and rate away. Now, the good folk at On Running, who have made this show possible today with their support, are giving you the chance to win one of 2 pairs of On Running shoes. Now, to win, you need to do 2 things. 1, simply repost one of the featured show images for this episode 130, featuring Tim Don, over on Instagram. Please be sure to tag in at on_running and also at Physical Performance Show. Now, when you repost, be sure to add a caption as to why you would like to win a pair of On Running shoes. And on episode 131, I'll announce the winner of the 2 lucky winners with instructions on how you can claim your On Running shoes. So massive thanks to today's sponsor, On Running. Big thanks also to the great team who make this show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Matthew Walding on graphic design, and Susan Wilkin on all things administration. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we keep the featured performer theme going, and I bring you a wonderful conversation that I had with Australian athlete, Australian Winter Olympic champion, Lydia Lassila. For Australian listeners, Lydia's profile was recently boosted through an appearance on the Australian Survivor TV program, but there's so much more to Lydia than Australian Survivor. She is a 5 times Winter Olympian, a Winter Olympic champion in aerial skiing, and also, like today's guest, Tim Don, a record setter, which she set when she became the first female in aerial skiing's history to perform the once thought impossible quadruple twisting triple somersault in competition. You're not going to want to miss Lydia Lassila on her highs, lows, and learnings on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.